Hello, today I'm going to introduce you to one of the dishes I used to love, I still do, as a child. It is basically a budget meal that gives you triple the protein. If that is something you're interested in, then this is a meal to do. You can use a whole chicken, or you can use the best parts of the chicken that you like. Some people like thighs, some people drumsticks. It's very versatile. You can choose whichever cut you want. I have about 2.5 pounds of chicken drumsticks over here that I have washed, cleaned, and dried. 2 onions, a can of garbanzo beans that I have rinsed and drained. I have the spices that I'm gonna be infusing the chicken with while I'm boiling it after we saute it and in the pan and make a crust on it with a little bit oil, some salt, and that's all that it takes for the chicken part. Then part 2, I'm gonna show you what you serve this chicken with, and it can be few options. I'll talk about them in the next step. First, let's start with this part. For the onions, we need to peel them and cut them into moon slices, not too thin. Let them be, kind of a good size. Not too thick either, but just the perfect size for this dish. About this thick. Meanwhile, I heated my pot and it's hot right now. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil, about 2 to 3 tablespoons. I will saute first my onions. And you hear the sizzle, just until they are golden. And to quicken the sauteing, actually, if you put tiny bit of salt, it will make it cook much faster. I like to also put some pepper. I like to spice my food as I go. In that same pot, add a little bit more oil, 2 to 3 tablespoons again. And I will be adding my chicken to the pot just to give them a little crust, not to cook them completely. Now at this point, don't move them too fast. Let them create a crust before you flip them. Just make sure that you do that. Here is what you need to achieve, some caramelization on the chicken, just like that. We flip to the other side. So here we go, we put all the onion, the chicken back into the pot. We will add water, and in a pressure cooker, I don't need to add water to cover the chicken. But if you're doing it in a regular pot, you will need to put enough water for the chicken to, be covered and boil slowly, as if you're making soup, but not quite. But we will need the juice that this chicken and onion and spices are gonna boil to cook the rice or whatever you would choose to complete this recipe, to complete this dish. Now into the water, I'm gonna add quite a bit of salt. I will add at this point about 1.5 teaspoons. I have about 5 pounds of chicken. I said 2.5 pounds before. I meant 2.5 kilos. It's about 5 pounds of chicken. So I'm feeding a bunch today. I have a crowd. So the aromas that I add into the flavoring to infuse the chicken and the broth is bay leaves. So I'm using 2 bay leaves. This is the star anise. A stick of cinnamon. I can cut it in half so it can give more flavor. I have one pod of cardamom. It takes away the gaminess of chicken if the chicken is gamey. Some allspice corns and some peppercorns. All this goes in. Just make sure it is covered. And I'm gonna pressure cooker mine. Now for yours, you can just bring it to a boil and then reduce the heat and let it boil until the chicken comes off the bone. So we have different options to serve that chicken dish with. We have rice. I'm using medium grain rice here, or you can also use this type of pasta, which is we call it sometimes maftool. It's or Israeli couscous, or even orzo. You can use that too. Just make sure you saute them really well before you add the broth to them, to cook them in the broth, for them to get infused even more with the flavors that we need to achieve at the end. So in the rice, which I'm gonna cook today, I also will add some other spices. I have 2 teaspoons of 7 spice. It is very similar to the 5 Chinese spice. That can be used as well. 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander seeds. Those are gonna go with the rice as we cook it in the broth that we're gonna have from the chicken. Okay, I'm gonna open now. I don't know what happened with my chicken. It was boiling for about 15 minutes or so in my pressure cooker. Now yours is gonna be boiling a lot longer when you're cooking it with a regular pot. So I'll pull out some chicken, and I can already tell that it is falling off the bone. See? So that's how it looks. This is the color of the broth. It has the onions, the chicken, and it smells so good. Okay, at this point, now I'm gonna add the garbanzo beans, because those I chose to keep out so they don't overcook. And since the broth is really, really hot, they will absorb the flavors. I will try to get some of the liquid for me to cook the rice. Okay, I have my pot on the stove. I'll add just tiny bit of olive oil here, to just a touch, to saute my rice a little bit. I am doing 3 cups of rice, so I will use about 4 cups, a little bit more maybe. I'll see. You need to go over the rice about 1 inch of liquid for it to come out really nice and cooked well, not too mushy nor al dente, just right. So into this rice, I'm gonna add my spices and a tiny bit of salt, because the broth is already salty. So don't over salt, because you cannot take it out, but at the end you can add if you wish. Just a little bit of salt. Mix the rice with all these spices right there. I'll add the broth. And it has some garbanzo beans, it has some onions, and I have extra sauce with garbanzo beans and onions left to the side that you can add after. Okay, now that the broth came back to a boil, I will turn down the heat, cover, and let it cook for about 25 minutes or so. Now that the rice, after about 25 minutes, it absorbed the liquid, it's completely cooked, I just fluff it a little bit and I let it rest for 5 minutes or so before I put it out so it doesn't clump and become sticky. So now that the dish is over and it's done, let's try it because it smells so sweet and delicious. I will pour a little bit onto my plate. It also has some sauce, that broth that, you know, the chicken boiled in. You can add a little bit on top of your food if that's something that you wish. It's always good. And I eat it also with a little bit of yogurt. I love that on the side. So you have triple the protein, you have the chicken, you have the garbanzo beans, you have the yogurt that goes with it. It's super nutritious and it is totally very, very good. It's a childhood memory. It's delicious. It's so good. Maybe it doesn't show to be very attractive meal, but the flavor is out of this world. Try it. You're gonna love it. And it is on a budget.